Bills Mafia on tonight's Air Raid Hour post-game show. We are diving into all things Bills Texans. We've got the latest injury updates, major takeaways, and a whole lot more. Stay tuned. This is a breakdown you won't want to miss. But first,
welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour presented by Picasso's Pizza and the Cover One Sports Network. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at the Bills Guys. Joined, as always, by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. Together, we are the Bills Guys, and Dave, another therapy session this evening.
It's another therapy session, and you can tell that this particular therapy session is going to be feel a little bit different than the last one that we had when we lost to the Ravens. And you can see the comment sections on fire already, and we'll get to that because I think in the Ravens one, you could kind of chalk it up to like the Bills got a little bit of shell shock in the beginning of that game. They were kind of really never in it except for like slightly there in the second half. And you figured, okay, with the injuries and all that, it was just one of those one-offs. But then you start to then see this maybe 2 games in a row, and you start to think, is this now a trend? Is this not a one-off of what we saw in the Ravens game? And then that compounded with all of the, the coaching issues that we're going to get into in this game that transpired, I think has left people feeling quite frustrated and a bit boiled over, a bit from last week, but mostly because of this game right here.
Yeah, we got some super chats here in the comment section to prove some of that anger is boiling over. Justin Tyndall coming in with a series of super chats here. So we're going to lead off the show because I think that's what a lot of people want to talk about still is the decision that Sean McDermott made at the end of the game here. Justin comes in and says, never been a Sean McDermott guy. Our opponent punts from your 49. Of course, you're going to get backed up. But when you know you're at the 3-yard line, you say in your headset, run the ball. He follows up by saying, hoping Sean McDermott knew he had no timeouts. Take the 10-second runoff there. You get the ball back with 22 seconds left. 3 runs, 10 seconds, leave the Texans with no timeout. Punt, and the Texans try Hail Mary or take a knee. Overtime. I guess Sean McDermott wanted 13 seconds to have company mentioned it on last week's show, but can Hollins and MVS starve? 26 targets, 89 catches, 99 yards. The show is on at 11 a.m. his time in Australia, so he's not going to get to see the show till tonight, but to keep up the good work. So thank you. A lot to digest there, and I know we're going to get to the MVS and the Mac Hollins stuff a little bit later on in the show, but let's lead off with that decision by Sean McDermott after the penalty that the throwing the ball away, intentional grounding by the Houston Texans. They're about to punt from around midfield. There's about 30 seconds left in the game. Sean McDermott has no timeouts. He chooses not to take the 10-second runoff, knowing exactly where Houston is punting from, gets penned back deep in his own end, the 3-yard line, and then makes the decision. And he said after the game he regrets not passing on the 10-second runoff, not going for the win. He regrets not running the ball on first down. That's the only regret that he mentioned having. But what do you think about Sean McDermott's decision, and what do you think about his commentary afterwards?
I will say this, given where the field position was and given how the offense had performed all day, which was not well, the decision not, I do think you have to start with the decision not to take the 10-second runoff, because in that scenario, what your best case is, you're probably going to get the ball to 20 if the Texans punt it through the end zone. And then even still, you have no timeouts and 20 odd seconds left, right? So, okay, fine. Don't take the 10-second runoff. You think 30 seconds left in the game, no timeouts. Maybe we get lucky and they punt it through the end zone and you have 30 seconds to somehow get in field goal range. But then if you're going to say on the other side of that you regretted not running the ball on first down, you really can't have it both ways, because then that kind of contradicts the decision you made about not taking the 10-second runoff, right? If you were going to be aggressive, then you have to come out and say, hey, we didn't take the 10-second runoff because we wanted to try to get a field goal in the last 30 seconds, knowing that you had no timeouts. It was going to be tough to do. In that scenario, I think you need to look at situationally that you have no timeouts, that other team has 3, you're likely going to be pinned inside your own 20, and the way your offense had been performing that day, you really probably should have played for overtime and taken your chances and maybe getting the ball first, or stopping the Texans on offense and getting a field goal to kind of try to win that game. I think strategy-wise, it was flawed, and I get it. Coaches aren't perfect, but we are also now, this is seemingly late game decisions are an Achilles heel for Sean McDermott in his tenure here with the Bills.
He said after the game, like, I'm going to trust Josh Allen with the ball in his hands. I want the ball in Josh Allen's hands to go out and try to win the game. I'm all for that, and I'm not against that philosophy, but I'm trying not to swear because it's the top of the show. I usually save the swear words for the end of the show, right? When the family audience is left, but I'm trying not to swear. Like, know the effing situation. Do you know how many passes they completed over 10 yards in that game, Dave? Air yards.
How many?
10 air.
I don't know.
One pass. They completed one pass over 10 air yards. All the other passes that went over 10 yards were yak, right? The Keon Coleman, the Matt Collins, etc. They completed one pass over 10 yards the entire game, air yards. At that point in the game, Josh Allen was 9 for 27 passing the football. I don't know what the analytics and what the data say, but my analytics in my own brain, you know what the percentage chance the Buffalo Bills had of winning that football game back up their own 3-yard line with 30 seconds and no timeouts? They had a 0% chance of winning that football game in regulation. That's my analytics right there, right? Like, they had none.
No time, I mean, with no timeouts, especially, right?
None.
I mean, that's the thing. And it's not just that you had no timeouts, it's that the other team had 3. So
it just gets worse.
Like,
you take the runoff, you run the ball 3 times, you punt the ball back to them, and then all of a sudden they're probably where they are at, right? They're probably where they're at, but they have no time to run that extra play to get the extra yards, and they're kicking like a 60 some odd yard field goal.
They probably can't even do that, right?
They probably can't even kick field goal.
Because if let's say you run the ball 3 times and each run takes, I don't know, 3 to 4 seconds, and then the punt, if Sam Martin has a little bit more room, you can get a little more hang time on it. That's another maybe 4 to 5 seconds. You're talking like they have 5-6 seconds left at that point, maybe 7 seconds left, and they have no time to do anything except maybe try one quick pass to the sideline, and that's really it, right? I mean, they I don't know. It didn't help that also they like had a little bit of a return on that punt as well, because the team, the gunning team couldn't get down there quick enough. So,
Jason M says they needed a first down. Yeah, they needed a first down to ice it and send it to overtime, 100% guaranteed. But they put themselves in a terrible situation. They didn't need the first down to put Houston in a more disadvantageous position. And I understand that we're talking about playing for overtime here, not playing for the win, right? So we still could have just lost this game in overtime. 100% agree with that. But on top of all of this, one thing we also forget to mention is that every time Josh Allen dropped back to pass in the end zone, if a holding would have been committed in the end zone, it would have been a safety and Houston would have won that game too. Like, there was just such a lack of brain cells involved in the decision of Sean McDermott there, and his just lack of a thorough answer at the end. Well, I wish I would have ran it on first down. Bullshit. You should have ran it on all goddamn 3. Like, there was just no excuse for it. Play for overtime, try to force them to a field goal in overtime and then score a touchdown, or get the ball first and score a freaking touchdown. Like, it's not hard. It's not hard.
The other thing I could say sequentially, and I think Greg Thompson made a good point on this, is like you run it on first down. Maybe you get lucky and you pop like a 10-yard run and you get the first down, right? And at that point, like, overtime's a guarantee. Maybe you pop it for 7 yards. You at least get out of your own end zone. Then I could somewhat understand maybe you put the ball in Josh Allen's hands on second down because you can give him something short, right? Something to where something short where it's like maybe you just dump it off to James Cook or you dump it off to Dalton Kincaid to where it's guaranteed that they're going to catch the ball and keep the clock moving, and you try to pick up 3 or 4 yards, right? I mean, but I think you had to run it on first down. So I agreed with Greg on that, and I think like
Yeah.
to Uber's point that he made too, it's like if you disagreed with them throwing it on first down, then you weren't gonna want them to run it on second down. Like once you wanted them to throw it on first down, like there was no going back, right? I
Yeah.
think that's the point. Like you're not gonna
And
throw it on first down and then come back and run it on second. Like there's no point in
yeah,
doing that.
you wanted them to use all 3 of those timeouts because Jason M comes back and Jason, I love that you disagree with me because I love this discourse here. He says if Houston has enough time to get a 4-yard playoff and spike it with extra time, they would have shorter time off and run 3 plays. If we had forced them to use all 3 of their timeouts and then punted, even if it was punting from right around where we punted from, and I still think we would have had a little bit more cushion had we run the ball, right? Than our own 3-yard line. The middle of the field is no longer available to them because I don't think they'll have enough time to spike a ball.
I
I
agree.
really don't think they'd have enough time. If they got the yards that they needed to kick a solid field goal, I don't think they would have had enough time to run up and spike the
They would have
ball.
only
They
had
would
like
have been
7
playing for the
seconds left
they
in
would
the
have been
game.
playing for the sideline, and that's a lot easier to defend than the middle of the field. They would have been playing for the boundary. They would have had a perfectly executed play to the boundary. They would have had to get out of bounds. There's just so many things that would have had to gone right for them to even get into field goal range. So, to me, it was just a mind-blowing decision by Sean McDermott. And at the end of the day, it was, and we're going to get into the advanced analytics of it. The Bills won toxic differential in this game. The Bills won the complimentary football tracker in this game. Like there was really no excuse for the Buffalo Bills to lose this football game. The ineptitude of the offense is the number one reason why. Obviously, they only scored on 4 of 12 possessions, 2 of those scores being field goals. That's unacceptable when Josh Allen is your quarterback. And that is the reason why we lost this football game. But Sean McDermott just gave us no shot at winning it with the way that he made that decision at the end of the game. He should have been playing for overtime. And I hate to say that. I'm the most aggressive guy here, right? I literally spent the last week of the season saying Tyler Bass, I don't trust him to kick a field goal. We should be going for everything around midfield. I'm the most aggressive guy here. Like I hate punting, but that's the one situation where I'm like, use your brain, dude. Like situation does matter. And in that situation, my goodness, play for overtime.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think that we're sharing a sentiment that seems to be the consensus sentiment here. Like a lot of analysts, coaches, whatever, are questioning the decision making at the end of the game. And look, I will say this, right? It's been a rough 2 weeks for Joe Brady, and Sean McDermott did take the accountability in the press conference. But even if it was Joe Brady's calls, and like, let's say Sean McDermott didn't know that was happening ahead of time, because he did look a little pissed off after that second one and said, hey, like we got to be playing for the first down. You could tell he's got to be in Joe Brady's headset. Like I forgot I think Jason M mentioned it. Like you got to be in Joe Brady's headset before that drive starts to say, hey, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to try to play for overtime. That's like a head coach. That's a head coach decision right there.
Walter S coming in saying, Judge, I'm the most aggressive guy here. Is that a challenge? Yeah, it is a challenge, Walter. I think people who watch this show know, like, I hate punting. I hate special teams. I'm Mr. Go for it like almost every single time. And I'm sitting there watching this game going like, what are you doing? Like, I'm just screaming at the television. I'm like, what is going on? But we're past it now. I think we should spend the rest of the show talking about maybe things that we want to see the Buffalo Bills fix or adjust, because they do have a nice little, I don't want to say break in the schedule here, but it's certainly not the Houston Texans or the Baltimore Ravens of the world for a solid month stretch. And the Buffalo Bills have a chance to really get right over the next month, put a nice buffer dent in their schedule over the next month. So we're going to spend the rest of this show talking about what the Buffalo Bills can do to get better. Some news and injury notes: Josh Allen not in concussion protocol. It's obviously not advantageous. He's been taking a ton of hits. That injury that a lot of people thought, oh, did he get concussed? Even though he went to the blue tent, the independent neuro consultant tested him for a concussion and he cleared and went back into the game. He also injured his chest on that play. He injured his ankle on that play. He's been taking shots week after week, a lot and due to his own holding onto the football. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but Josh Allen not in concussion protocol today, not showing any symptoms today. Nothing new on Khalil Shakir, Ed Oliver, Taron Johnson, and Taylor Rapp. So this is still a pretty decently banged up football team.
decently banged up football team, but at least it looks like outside of like some of these things that we know Josh Allen's going to play through coming out of this game, no new injuries, it
Mhm.
would appear. Terrel Bernard looked no worse for the wear with that pec injury. Obviously made some huge plays in this game. It was great to see him back. So that was definitely something I was paying attention to coming into this, was like, how effective was Terrel Bernard going to be coming back from that injury? And he looked really good. So if you want to try to find like maybe a silver lining on some of the injury front news, like that was a nice welcome sight to see Terrel Bernard come back and really look still quite effective coming back from that injury. So we'll
Mhm.
see what happens with Josh Allen here. Look, I'm not going to like be the person to sit here and say like, oh, you can't put him back. Like, look, I don't know. Like, is there conspiracy to like get these star players back in the game? We saw this with Russell Wilson a couple, like, I don't know, right? But
Mhm.
the NFL put all these protocols into place so that some stuff like this couldn't happen. And like, I'll trust until I know otherwise that he passed the protocols from the independent, the neuro person on the sideline,
Mhm.
whatever. And so, yeah, I'm gonna just have
Yeah.
to go with that and just assume that it was done properly.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of Dolphins fans out there today, and even virtue signaling Bills fans who are just like, "Oh, it's unacceptable that they put him back into the game. Like, just use your eyes. Like all this, all that. Oh, how dare you call it an ankle injury? It's possible to hurt multiple body parts on one play." And literally, Buffalo Bills PR put out a tweet. Josh Allen was examined by an independent, neuro exam, cleared the protocol, and is back on the field. So Josh Allen wasn't checked for an ankle injury. He wasn't checked for a chest injury. He was checked for a head injury by an independent consultant, and he was put back into the game.
Mhm.
So the virtue signaling from Dolphins fans, from some Bills fans, that needs to chill out a little bit. All right. This episode is brought to you by Picasso's Pizza with 4 convenient locations in Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Picasso's Pizza has been serving Buffalo's best pizza since 1980. Whether you're local or across the country, you can enjoy their delicious pizza delivered fresh to your door. Visit picassospizza.net to place your order today. Again, that is picassospizza.net. All right, on to our one big thing. And every week we try to just pick one thing because there's a million things that we probably want to talk about from this football game. We try to pick the one big takeaway that we have. Dave, for you, what is your one big takeaway this week?
Well, the one big takeaway now is the trend of this offense, and I think Joe Brady front and center here now with, um, like I took a quick peek at the show notes, so I know kind of what you're going to get at here with
Mhm.
yours, but I'll just talk about Joe Brady and the rough stretch that he's on right now, dropping 2 games. And large part, again, the Ravens game was a combination of the offense and the defense. But I think in this game, you could say that the defense played quite admirably after giving up a couple big plays early. Obviously, the Nico
Mhm.
Collins play, but the defense essentially dragged this team back into the game and really got this team back into the game. You mentioned, and we're going to talk about the toxic differential, the 2 takeaways this defense had. Um, they held the Texans to 3.4 yards per rush, so they
Mhm.
did a fairly decent job containing the running game. Cam Akers only had 42 on the ground with a long of 15, so only 8 for 27 for his other 8 rushes. Pretty good job on him. Dare only had 15 for 30 on the ground. So like the Bills defense did a pretty good job in keeping him in this game, but this offense and Joe Brady, like they need to find answers in a hurry. So
Mhm.
my one big thing for this week is going to be like, what is going to be the answer then next week as you head into Monday Night Football against the Jets, who have a really good defense? And there's actually going to be quite a bit of pressure on this offense and Josh Allen after going 9 for 30 in this game. No easy throws to be found in this game. Some that were set up to be easy throws weren't blocked properly. Guys weren't getting separation. How is Joe Brady going to handle this bit of adversity
Mhm.
he's going through early in the season? Because the pressure on this Bills team to win on Monday night against I'll say below average, at least to this point, Jets team, there's a lot of pressure on this team now to win, because this could be the difference between essentially falling behind in a tiebreaker with the Jets in the division or really effectively going up 2
Mhm.
games in the division. So this offense has to get back on track, and Joe Brady's got to find some answers. Didn't love some of the answers he gave in the press conference today. It's like, oh, if we had started, 0-2 and won 3 in a row, everyone would be feeling good. It was like, well, no, Joe, because that means we probably would have been playing better in the last 3 games than we've been playing in these last 2 games. So if it's a week-to-week league and you haven't been playing great in these last 2 games, like that's a terrible answer in my opinion. I don't love that answer at all. So that's for me my one big thing.
Yeah, there was some not so great answers from a lot of the members of the Buffalo Bills coaching staff today. My big thing is Joe Brady. I don't even want to get into his play calling yet because I haven't had really time to dive into and watch the play calling aspects of it so much. So just on a surface level, the personnel usage from Joe Brady is starting to really rub me the wrong way and get on my nerves. I like Matt Collins, the football player. Joe Brady is making me not like him. I like Dawson Knox, the football player. Joe Brady is making me not like him. I like Curtis Samuel. Joe Brady is making me not like him. And there's a multitude of ways. Like Matt Collins, if you're playing 5-6 snaps a game on offense and doing your thing on special teams, I like you as my wide receiver 5. Targeting him the most of any receiver on the team, I don't like you, Matt Collins. Like that's Joe Brady. That is Joe Brady, right? Dawson Knox. The Buffalo Bills gave him, $10 million a season for a reason. He has shown that he can be a competent tight end in the National Football League. We're not targeting him. Like what? We're not putting him on the field, more than 50% of the time or around 50% of the time. I don't understand it. Curtis Samuel, right? This guy has shown, and Matt Harmon from Reception Perception has done a great job pointing out that this guy can run a pretty diverse route tree and is a pretty good separator. NFL Next Gen Stats shows that he's a pretty decent separator, yet Joe Brady is making him like an Isaiah McKenzie type of gadget guy. I don't understand how you're investing $11.1 million between Dawson Knox and Curtis Samuel this year, and they've combined for 78 yards in 5 games. That's insane. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're not on the field enough because we're putting Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Reggie Gilliam and Tyrell Shavers and Alex Anderson a whopping 17 times on the football field on offense. I don't understand it. There were 244 snaps combined for the 4 skill positions outside of running back in this game. 58% of those snaps were funneled through Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Dalton Kincaid, and Dawson Knox. 42% of the snaps outside of running back for our skill position went to Matt Collins, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Tyrell Shavers, Quintin Morris, Alec Anderson, and Reggie Gilliam. Coleman and Kincaid only had 62% of the snaps. What are Coleman, Kincaid, what are they doing in the 60s? They should be in the 80s. Dawson Knox should have been in the 50 plus this game. Curtis Samuel should have been pushing 60, 70% in this game. What are they doing? Putting these scrubs, these non-factors, these non-threats onto the football field when at skill positions. I don't understand what the Buffalo Bills are doing right now with their personnel packages. Not to mention all the constant shuffling cannot be good for the rhythm of your offense.
No, and I think that you hit it there on the head and the inefficiency of the passing game showing through. And that's kind of a bit frustrating because you actually look at what the Bills did on the ground in this game, and they were quite effective running the football. I mean, James Cook was over 4 yards a carry. The Bills at 5.4 yards a carry. They ran for 150 yards. Now 50 plus of that was Josh Allen, but James Cook, 80 yards on the ground. This team was 4th in the NFL in rushing defense coming into this game playing against some decent rushing teams so far this year. And we talked about the DVOA coming into it. So like we talk about personnel usage, we talk about the sequencing of play calling, like all of that stuff there's no rhythm right now. The usage is certainly has to be a question mark. You're paying Curtis Samuel. He was like your prized free agent signing, like we said, going in, and all this chatter about like, we got to get him more involved. And then like, you hear the same answers from the coaching staff after the game. It's like, oh, we got to find a better way to do that. It's like, yeah, we've been hearing that. And whether it's Joe Brady this year with Curtis Samuel or in past years with other players, it's kind of been that same talking point at certain times. And I think it's exacerbated this year with the fact that there is no Stephon Diggs anymore that you can just kind of lean on. It's this everybody eats sort of mentality, but these guys maybe like either aren't as good as we thought, which I don't think is the case for guys like Samuel and Kincaid. I do think that's the case for Matt Collins and MVS, but also you have to figure out easier ways to get these guys the ball. You can't have the second best player in the NFL going 9 for 30,
Mhm.
like passing. Like you just can't. That just can't happen. And so a combination of even Josh not playing well, these guys not being able to get open, and the play calling being rough, as I think Jason had said on, referring back to Eric's film, and I agree. It was just a downward spiral for all three of those
Mhm.
factors in this game, and that's what essentially culminated into the horrible passing offense performance in this one.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Khalil Shakir, when he's healthy, and Dalton Kincaid should never be under 80% of the snap share. Period. End of story. Those have got to be your two workhorses that you funnel this offense through. They should be on the field at least 80% of the time. I went through today and I looked like, what are the best receivers in the National Football League? Like, what percentage of the snaps are they playing? And for the most part, the Jamar Chases, the CeeDee Lambs, like those guys of the world are playing 80 freaking plus percent of their team snaps. So guess what? Dalton Kincaid should be on the field that much. Khalil Shakir, when healthy, should be on the field that much. And I could argue that Keon Coleman should be on the field that much too, given the hot freaking garbage that is behind him on this depth chart. Let your youth learn. And on top of all of that, Keon Coleman, essentially, the Buffalo Bills have essentially decided he's a souped up Gabriel Davis. He's going to be a guy who runs some deep routes. He runs some verts from the slot. He's a guy who's going to get after it in the run game. He pretty much ran all of his routes from the boundary in this game with Khalil Shakir hurt, and he pretty much just went vertical most of the time. Those rub routes that went to Mac Hollins, why aren't we giving those mesh concepts to Keon Coleman across the middle of the field? Why aren't we putting Keon Coleman in the slot? Like, I think that he can be an integral role player in this offense. I've never been someone who says that Keon Coleman's going to be some alpha NFL number one receiver. I don't believe that. I think he's a 2 or a 3 in the National Football League. But at the end of the day, I think he can be an integral part of the offense. I think he can be used in a variety of ways. And the Buffalo Bills are just pretty much right now asking him to do one thing. And I think that that's malpractice as well.
No, I mean, I totally agree. And like, we didn't even really touch a ton on Dawson Knox either and how much you're paying him. And it's like, okay, what we're doing right now with Mac Hollins and MVS on the field, like they're not our offensive weapons that we need to be focusing on. So like maybe you need to mix up some of the formations and the usage as well to get Kincaid and Knox both on the field with Coleman and Samuel if Shakir's out, right? Like at that point, those are going to be your 4 best receiving options. So like you need to find a better way to get the best offensive weapons on the field. I get it. Mac Hollins is a good run blocker. And look, I know he made a nice block too on the way to Keon Coleman's touchdown. But like, if you can't get that kind of blocking from the rest of the group, then it's not worth the sacrifice you're making to not have a weapon on the field that can actually threaten the defense, like as a receiving option. So yeah, it is questionable a lot. Joe Brady's going to be under the microscope, especially under the spotlight in this Monday night game coming up against a good Jets defense.
Taking a look at some of the data from this game, our complimentary football tracker, this data might surprise you. The Buffalo Bills actually played better complimentary football than the Houston Texans if you go by sort of the equation that I have come up with here: time of possession, average starting field position, turnovers. The Texans won the time of possession battle 33-27. However, the Buffalo Bills had better average starting field position in this game than the Houston Texans. The Bills, their average starting field position was the 31. The Texans, their average starting field position was the 25.5-yard line. Houston's 2 best field positions of the day, though, and we talk about complimentary football here, the end of the first half, they got the ball at the Bills' 49-yard line, kicked a field goal to end that drive, and the last drive of the game, they got the ball at the Bills' 46, kicked a field goal to win the game. So the 2 best field positions that Houston had all day was the end of the first half and the end of the game. It led to 2 field goals, 6 points. The Bills lost by 3. So there's the ball game right there in terms of field position. So even though the Bills had better field position most of the day, when it mattered, Houston had good field position, even though their average field position was a 25.5-yard line. And then turnovers. The Bills had 2 traditional turnovers plus 1 turnover on downs. So 3 turnovers for the Bills, 0 turnovers for the Texans in terms of forcing said turnovers. So the Bills are now 3-1 when winning the complimentary football differential and 0-1 when losing, because the Bills played technically outside of 2 plays, better complementary football than the Houston Texans.
Yeah, and I think that's a testament really to how the defense kept this team in the game, right? I
Mhm.
mean, I think uh number one, that the 2 turnovers that were
Yep.
timely, but obviously you get the 1 turnover deep inside Houston territory, and you have to settle for a field goal to
Mhm.
tie the game, which really should have been a situation with this offense that you take the lead and then you force Houston to go down and score a touchdown to win the game, because that would have put you up by 4 at that point, if with, assuming Bass makes the extra point. And really the offense running the ball was quite effective. Like James Cook, I even mentioned in the beginning of the
Mhm.
game, like even the Bills were like he was showing pretty good vision, good patience. Um, he was slipping through some small windows there,
Mhm.
and I thought he was running the ball really well. And then it just, like it's one of those things where you look at the box score and you're like, okay, you can see Josh Allen was 9 for 30, but you dive into it a little more, the 2 turnovers, all these things. And obviously Nico Collins going out with the injury certainly helped the Bills. The Texans offense didn't really look quite the same once Nico Collins left the game, which was a huge benefit to the Bills, and they couldn't take advantage of that either. So just one of those unfortunate ones where
Mhm.
it ends up being a 3-point game at the end. And by the way, all the Texans wins so far this year are single possession wins. They've been able to close out close games this year.
Looking at toxic differential, 10 plus yard runs, the Texans had 3, the Buffalo Bills had 8. One of them was like a 7-yard rush that resulted in a 15-yard personal foul. So I threw that in there because technically it was a 22-yard gain, right? So 8 10 plus yard runs for the Buffalo Bills in this game. 15 plus yard passes. The Texans had 8 of them, the Bills only 4. And then turnovers. The Bills, like I said, forced 3 turnovers. If you count the turnover on downs, the Texans forced 0 turnovers. So looking at the data here, the Bills were +4 in toxic differential in this football game. They won the toxic differential battle. So they're now 3-1 on the season when winning toxic differential and 0-1 when losing. Again, it just goes to show you the ineptitude of the offense. 4 for 12, only two of those were field goals. The decision late at the end of the game, like it all adds up. And the Buffalo Bills decided, towards the end of the first half and towards the end of the second half to play their least complimentary football with that field position. And it ends up costing you at the end in these tight games.
It does. And not to mention the Bills 3 for 14 on third down in this game. I mentioned this online as well earlier. They're now sitting around 32% third down conversion on the season, which puts them 8th worst in the NFL. They were the number 1 third down conversion offense in the regular season last year at 49.2%. They converted almost
Mhm.
50% of their third downs last year on a season where we even felt at times like the offense didn't even look that good. And
Yeah.
Ken Dorsey got fired in the middle of the season. They were 49%. They were best in the
And
NFL
I'll tell you,
converting third downs. They're 8th worst so far this year.
I'll tell you what, like I almost feel like Josh Allen has a decision to make. Like I understand he's got a broken left hand, right? But at some point, your ability to run the football makes defenses do and act a certain way. And right now, Josh Allen, he did a little bit in this game against the Texans, a little bit
Mhm.
more. So maybe we're getting back to that. But every time we drop back on third down, I'm like, yeah, I don't really think Josh Allen's a threat to run here. I don't think that's his
Mhm.
mindset.
Right.
Now, one could argue we don't want that to be his mindset. We want him to figure out other ways to go accomplish this goal of picking up first downs. But when you're bottom of the barrel like we are on third down right now, I think that's one of the things that Josh Allen needs to reflect on this week. And he's got to ask himself, like, do I got to change my mindset on some of these third downs and be more of a threat as a runner to make the defenses play us a little bit differently so we can be more effective on third down?
It's certainly they gotta do something, right? He needs to bring out that X factor ability, and, like, the part of this too is, like, he's taken a ton of shots the last 2 weeks, like you said. The
Mhm.
pressure rate is up on him. I think Ant had a really good tweet. Pro Ant had a really good tweet earlier
Yep.
talking about how both the last 2 games over 40, I think it was 44% or thereabouts in the last 2 games, which through the first 3, I think it was in the 20s or even in the teens
Mhm.
for the first 3. So teams are basically saying, like, "Look, we don't respect your receiving core. We used to have to maybe worry about guys like Diggs and Gabe Davis hurting us when we brought pressure, and Josh Allen has been historically very good against pressure and the blitz. This year, his guys aren't getting open. The play calls are too long to like all those combinations the last 2 weeks, Texans are like, look, we're going to do the same things the Ravens did, bring pressure, hit this guy. He's been taking a lot of shots and he's been ineffective, right? And so it would not surprise me if Robert Saleh does the same thing again on Monday night. We've seen the Jets do this to Josh Allen in the past as well. They were one of the few teams that used to do this anyway. Even when Josh Allen was good against the blitz, they would say, screw it, we're going to bring the pressure, and you can expect that they're going to do the same thing again.
All right. Up next is Stock Up. I know you already mentioned the Bills ran the ball pretty well. I refuse to mention anything offensively for Stock Up. They're the reason why we lost this football game. I'm not giving them any credit, even though they might have run the ball well. I refuse to take any positive takeaways offensively out of this game. But do you have anything for the offense that you want to talk about for Stock Up?
I think James Cook and the run blocking was there. The pass blocking's been pretty bad the last 2 games, but even going back to the Ravens game, I thought the run blocking was there for James Cook. And so if you're going to give me a stock up on the offense, I'll say the run blocking and James Cook in the running game was pretty good. I mean, as a whole, he averaged over 4 yards per carry against a pretty good run D. But and yeah, as John Sanders mentions in the comments section, a nice run after catch by Coleman, keeping the feet in. By the way, that was
impressive.
Close. Good for him to keep the feet in, or lack of awareness for not realizing how close he was. I know he was very close to the sideline. I'm not going to take away from him, but yes, that was also good. But that's kind of where it ends on the offense, to be honest.
Defensively, different story. I think the headline here for Bills fans, the IB Terrel Bernard is back where he belongs in the middle of this defense. Just an absolute heck of a play on the interception. That just shows you the instincts Terrel Bernard has, like the next level instincts to pass off of his guy and then turn around and just know that the ball is going to be where the ball is going to be, and to make the play on the ball that he did. That was just a heck of a play on that interception. And then he was just impactful at the line of scrimmage, like in the run game. And there's just a different vibe out there with Terrel Bernard in the middle of that defense. So that was my biggest takeaway. And there are others on the defensive side of the ball, but Terrel Bernard's back, baby.
Terrel Bernard's back. Huge stock up for him. Needed him. Made impactful plays in this game. The interception, the big stop on 4th down was him as well. So yeah, huge to have him back in the mix there. And I will say that without him, we probably wouldn't have been, really had a chance at the end. So big stock up for Terrel Bernard. I mean, look, I'll say stock up for a couple of the young guys. Dorian Williams has been playing very well, coming downhill, playing against the run, playing with an attitude. One of the few guys on this team that seems to be playing with a bit of a swagger. And DeWayne Carter did look good in this game, getting his huge game.
I love his energy, man. I love his energy.
Him and Williams both, right? They have an energy about them, that same kind of energy that Terrel Bernard gives off, to be honest. And like, it was nice having that energy from DeWayne Carter without Ed Oliver in the lineup, because Ed Oliver can bring that energy at times as well. We saw 0 from the edge rushers in this game. Like, my take me higher player, Greg Rousseau, was a ghost in this game, made 0 impact. AJ Epinesa made 0 impact.
I thought Smoot, like some of it was from the interior, but I thought Smoot. And then early on, there were some like packages where it was like Groot, Epinesa, Smoot, and Solomon. I kind of liked those packages on pass downs. You didn't really see a lot of that, or at least it went away, and I just didn't notice it. But Smoot flashed and Solomon, I think, flashed a couple of times here and there.
Well, I'll rephrase it then. The guys that are supposed to be did not show up. Okay, so I'll give the young guys credit, but Dorian Williams, man. I mean, like, what can you say about his? He's not Matt Milano. I get that. He's also stylistically different than Milano, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's more of a downhill player, but he does have the speed as well. But he is really playing well, and you got to give him credit for stepping into a really difficult situation with Milano going down. And Christian Benford obviously continues to play well. But
I mean, just some exciting pieces on this defense between Christian Benford, Terrel Bernard, I think Dorian Williams, DeWayne Carter, Javon Solomon could be a nice situational type of edge guy. I'll say this, because Cole Bishop's going to come up in the negative section because of his miscommunication, and DeWayne Carter's going to come up because apparently, him and Zion Logue were at fault on that rushing touchdown. But Bishop took one on the chin early on that Nico Collins touchdown, and I thought he had a pretty solid game after that.
I
So
agree. I
Cole
agree.
Bishop getting some run, I think, is good. And if I'm the Buffalo Bills this year, like I'm not looking back. Like I know Cole Bishop took one on the chin, but I'm riding these dudes as long as I can. Like you look at Kansas City a couple of years ago when they were resetting and they had all those young guys playing on defense. Let Cole Bishop take his lumps. Let Dorian Williams take his lumps. Let DeWayne Carter take his lumps. Like I want these young guys on the field. Like I just want them playing. I want them getting more comfortable. I want the game to slow down for them because I just feel like they can be really good football players once that happens. You're starting to see it with Dorian Williams. You will see it with Cole Bishop. You will see it with DeWayne Carter. Just embrace the youth on this defense.
Yeah, embrace it and just know that, like, hey, you've got some reinforcements coming too with Taron Johnson, hopefully back soon,
Mhm.
Milano down the road, obviously. But like, we'll see. Ed Oliver hopefully will be back for this Jets game with that extra day. Like, this defense has a chance, Sans Milano, to be fairly healthy here in the next week or so.
Mhm.
And if this offense could figure some things out, because offensively, you really, other than Shakir's ankle, really aren't battling through any
Yep.
injury concerns on that side of the ball. This team outside of Milano could look fairly healthy here in a couple weeks. So you'd like
Mhm.
to kind of carry that momentum into this next stretch of games, get this team back on track, build a little buffer in the division. And I think, yes, Bishop, I mean, I reacted obviously after that play to
Mhm.
I mean, it was his fault. But you gotta like what you heard from Rasul Douglas. He told him to forget about it after the game, like really came to his, you know, came
Yeah.
to his teammates' side there and said, "Look, it's you just got to move on. That's the life of a DB, right? Like it's gonna
Mhm.
happen, and you just got to learn from it." And after that, I thought he really came back and played a decent game.
We get stock up for Tyler Bass, 2 big makes in this game.
I mean, look, Tyler I mean, he had to, he had to probably feel a little bit nervous on that one where he was probably hoping, like, I hope they just score a touchdown here to give us the lead. And that extra point would have made it a 4-point lead. So he had to make that field goal to tie the game.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if I want to say it's stock up or stock leveling out maybe for Tyler Bass. I think maybe this is just who he's gonna be. Like
Yeah.
he's not gonna be that 85 to 90% kicker. He's gonna be like maybe more of an 80% kicker, which I mean, with that leg, you're just gonna have to deal with it for now. And
Mhm.
Sam Martin, as I keep mentioning, Steve Noble mentions it in the comments. He's continuing to have a pretty good
Yeah.
season, my guy,
Yeah,
Sam Martin, who I've
it was his coverage guys, I think, let him down there before the half. So
yeah.
that really wasn't on Sam Martin. That was a pretty solid punt.
Yeah, and he's been punting well recently,
Mm.
and, look, we wanted him all of us wanted him gone for cap reasons and all
Yep.
that, but for now, he's having a decent year, and the Bills, unfortunately, are punting more than
Mm.
they like to recently, so there you go.
All right, on to the stock down for this game. Some of the negative takeaways, and this is pretty much an offensive conversation. We've already had the Joe Brady personnel usage conversation. We don't really need to rehash that.
Mm,
You mentioned the Bills pass, the offensive line, pass protection has been worse over the last couple of weeks. And I agree. I'm not really that concerned about the offensive line. I think this is mostly on Josh Allen, to be honest with you. Like you have Josh Allen holding onto the ball longer. He's passing up on opportunities underneath and he's looking downfield and pressing downfield too much when he doesn't have the dogs at the receiver position to be doing that as much as he is doing it. It's affecting the offensive line productivity and pass protection. It's throwing off the rhythm of this offense. I mean, only one pass completed over 10 air yards. There's your clue, Josh. Hit the dump off, right? 9 for 30 is just genuinely awful efficiency, like historically bad efficiency. Hard to
mhm.
get into a rhythm. Like if you would have hit a couple of your dump offs over the course of this game, instead of holding onto that ball, putting your offensive line in a bind and trying to throw the ball down the field to receivers that just weren't freaking open. And he also missed a couple too. Let's not forget that. Like he had Dalton Kincaid in a touchdown. He should have hit him on that touchdown. He should have thrown a better pass to Dalton Kincaid when he bobbled it on the sideline. Whether you want to call it a catch or you don't. Josh had some passes downfield that could have been better. I'm not too worried about the offensive line right now. I think it's Josh Allen that's got to get his head screwed on right. And I think the injuries are taking a toll on him. I think this is a guy who's just beaten down right now. So maybe that extra day off is going to be good for him.
He's beaten down, and just the combination of, like, him sort of not playing his best, the play calling, some of the protection issues, like, it's just really compounded into what has become what was just an extremely inefficient, we'll call it, game really 2 games, we'll say at
Mhm.
this point. And the shots he's taking are, to me, like, I cringe every time I see him take a couple of these shots. And like on the broadcast, the one where he went down and what got checked out, as soon as like he threw the ball downfield, you'd see that last frame he just gets nailed, and you're like, oh crap, and then they come back to him and he's on the ground. So some of the concepts, I think, from Joe Brady and
Mhm.
the route tree, the route concepts need to be looked at. The usage you mentioned, like the whole offense
Mhm.
rhythm, all of this stuff needs to be in the stock down right now, because it's just pretty rough right now. Yeah, I will say, like, maybe the offensive line isn't like solely to blame here. They're probably one like the least of your
Mhm.
issues outside of James Cook right now. But maybe you'd say the stock down as a receiving core as a whole,
Mhm.
as an item, right?
Yeah.
Um, a lot of chatter online about like trying to go out and get someone at the trade deadline. See a lot of people mentioning that, but at the end of the day, like it's still going to be come down to utilization, right? Like you have Curtis Samuel at home, right? You haven't been able to use him, so are you just gonna go back to trying to have, like, an alpha type of guy like a Diggs and feed him 160 targets and not be super creative with the rest of your personnel? Like, I don't know, right? Charles G says, "What's Brady's answer for man coverage?" And you can't say mesh. Um, well, I do think that there needs to be a little bit
Mhm.
of when it comes to man coverage, the thing you need to do is you need to motion a bit more in pre-snap, get matchups that you like, isolate guys into matchups that you would prefer, like maybe get I mean Shakir wouldn't play in this game, but get some maybe like Shakir against a linebacker or Kincaid against a linebacker. And I know Ashir had a really good game against him, but you want to move guys around when teams are in man coverage to match them up against um, match them up in an advantageous situation. That's really your answer. And man, not to mention the motion kind of gives you a clue as to whether or not um, they are in man coverage. So that would be my answer to that. I know everyone wants to talk about the mesh concepts, and the Texans ran mesh really well, by the way, in this game against zone. But um, against man, I think that's what you need to do.
Yeah, I mean the receiver separation is an issue. We talked about it all off season. We every off season show we did, we're like the Bills are not adding any quick separators. Like I don't mind outside of Marquez Valdez Scantling, who I've always said sucks and will always suck, except for like the biggest games in the playoffs. Uh, I I I I like what the Bills added to their receiver room this year, but they needed to do more, and they need to use Curtis Samuel properly because Curtis Samuel is a separator if you use him properly, unless that turf toe is an issue that you're just not reporting, or he just completely fell off at the age of 28, which seems odd to me. So receiver separation is an issue. Against man coverage, you mentioned it. They got to go back to that motion and all those different things that they were doing. It completely went away. And I'll tell you what, like with the receiver separation issues, to D'Amico Ryans, man, these guys, it was Josh Boyer level disrespect from them with the cover zero in this game. And because they knew the Buffalo Bills had no quick separators, they had no answers for the cover zero until the Keon Coleman touchdown. They just did not adjust to it at all. So I expect the New York Jets to come out and they're just going to cover zero the shit out of Josh Allen in every down and distance situation. The Buffalo Bills need to be prepared for that. The Buffalo Bills need to have better answers for that.
They do, and you kind of look at like what did the Vikings do this past week against the Jets, and like you look at the passing game, and really Sam Darnold didn't do a whole lot in that game. So the Jets defense did their part against the Vikings, even though the Vikings won that game. It was a little bit on the ground with Aaron Jones before he got hurt, and then Ty Chandler, and really the Vikings defense scored a defensive touchdown in that game. So that Jets defense is going to be a test, especially with the way this offense is playing right now. It's not like this offense is coming in hot and like you're going to go up against a good defense. Like you talking about going against a good defense compounded with the fact that your offense is totally out of rhythm right now. It's going to be a challenge. And I think I know RJ keeps mentioning in the comments section that we'll be lucky to score 3 points, and let's hope that's not the case. But I do think the Bills need to find a way to score 20 plus against the Jets to win that game. And I guess we'll see with that extra day if they can find some answers.
On the defensive end, some miscommunication issues. DeWayne Carter, Zion Logue on that rushing touchdown, Cole Bishop, and Rasul Douglas on that Collins touchdown. Never good to see your team not have enough guys on the field and Dorian Williams rushing onto the field late when you need a big stop to not let the other team get into field goal range at the end of the game. So communication issues, pretty concerning and pretty damning, whether that's player execution or whether that's on the coaching staff. The Buffalo Bills need to get that cleaned up on the defensive end.
They do. And it's funny because like there's not a whole lot of stock down to talk about defensively for this game, but there is still some stuff to clean up.
I got a pretty decent list here. Like
On the yeah.
Yeah, I know, because like, and some people in the comment sections are right. Like, if Nico Collins doesn't pull a hammy,
That's true.
blowing by Rasul Douglas, does our defense actually rebound?
Let me add one that's been a frustrating point for me, and I text you and Casey and Knapp like cynically about
it's a
this all the
running
time.
joke at this point.
It
I know
is
exactly what you're
if
gonna
it's the third and longs, right? The third and long defense.
The
it's
Texans
just,
had us right where they wanted us all
ha-
second half with those
like,
third and longs.
It's just so funny in like the memes you see where it's like the Bills on third and long, and it's like an open floodgate. The Bills on fourth and inches, and they're so good. Like it's like you're almost more comfortable with this team being in third and 3 than you are being third and 11, like on defense, and that's sad. The Texans were 50% converting third downs on the day. It's it's one of those things that it's a joke, but it's really not really a joke anymore because you're seeing it happen. If you look at the Bills right now, they're bottom 10 in the NFL in third down defense, allowing 43.9% conversion. That's ninth worst in the league. So their third down offense, eighth worst. Their third down defense, ninth worst. So yes, I will agree with you that that's a definite stock down. Third down defense needs some work.
So I had miscommunication. I had third and long. I also have putting our team in an early hole. Our offense just can't function from too far behind. So how about bend but don't break and start forcing some field goals and stop letting teams into the end zone so much in the first, quarter and a half of the football game. I think that would also be something that the Bills could look to improve on defensively.
I mean, yeah, you can't like the running sort of theme for the Sean McDermott's defenses have been like those first drives, they've been very susceptible to giving up points, and then they kind of settle in. But it'd be nice to not do that every once in a while. Like maybe get the ball back to your. And I will say too, like the last couple of games, the Bills have gotten the ball first, and the first 3 games they won the toss and deferred and got the ball in the second half. And I think that's part of it too. Is like
the double dip opportunity.
Yeah, the double dip, and just like it does put a little bit more pressure on the offense right out of the gate if you're receiving because you're not getting the ball out of the half, and like that's a little bit more pressure on Joe Brady as well. I think it's a lot easier to start the game playing defense. The defense is a little bit more in rhythm. We know that. I know the third down issue is fine, but then at least you kind of have that little bit of a safety net to where you're going to get the ball in the second half. So last 2 weeks that hasn't been the case. So I'm not saying that's the reason, obviously, but I am saying it was nice the first 3 games where the Bills did defer and got the ball to start the second half.
The last negative sort of takeaway I had was Gregory Rousseau. I'm really starting to question whether or not I have no problem with picking up the 5th-year extension. I'm starting to through 5 weeks, and he has time to change my mind here. I wouldn't sign him to an extension beyond his 5th-year extension right now. Like his impact plays are just few and far between. He is a solid length and strength defensive end. I'll give him that. He'll always be that. But in terms of the impact plays, the things that are going to get you pushing $20 million AAV, he doesn't do enough of that. He'll have one big game, then he'll disappear, making those impact plays for 4 or 5, and then he'll come back in another big game. And it seems like those big stats, like the sacks and things, he accumulates all in one game and then goes quiet, and then accumulates them all in another game and then goes quiet. I like Greg Rousseau, the player. As is, I'd be fine with him if he's willing to sign some like $10-12 million AAV deal, because I think he is a elite length and strength defensive end. He's very good at setting the edge. But in terms of making the impact plays, I'm not giving him a second contract right now because he doesn't do enough of it.
Yeah, and this isn't all that different from some of the conversation we had about Ed Oliver, before last offseason. Was like he makes those big impact plays in chunks and then kind of disappeared at times. Now, last year was elite play from Ed Oliver all year after he got that contract. Do you dare, hope that could happen with a second time with Greg Rousseau, where it's like, hey, give you a contract extension, and then you kind of blossom into being an elite level, reliable, elite level player game to game, and not just like at times? It's going to be an interesting conversation for the offseason. But I think like you went out, you gave AJ Epinesa this, pretty decent contract to come back. Von Miller, what are you going to do with him? You don't really have another, like, I would say, starting caliber length type of guy like that, right? You have Solomon in the wings to kind of fill that Von Miller void. You have Epinesa, but like, who do you have behind that? Cameron Klein? Like, I mean, who do you have? Smoot? Like, he's here for 1 year. Like, you don't really have anyone in the cupboard. So it's like, what do? You're kind of in a tough situation if you're the Bills and you're Brandon Beane. So maybe let's just hope that he picks up his play these next couple games and kind of like really rounds into form, because he started out hot right in that first week, and then since then it's been a little bit more subdued. So
I need him to, if he wants to get $20 million AAV, which is probably what it's going to take to re-sign a guy like him, I need an impact like a guy like Trey Hendrickson has in the passing game. I'm not questioning his ability to set the edge or to do things he does in the ground game. And I'm not saying he's not like an upper echelon, like top 25 edge rusher in the National Football. I'm not. But like when we talk about asset allocation and where we're spending our money, if you go out and you give Gregory Rousseau $20 million AAV and he only generates any real pass rush productivity for you every 4 games or every 5 games, to me, that's bad asset, management, because you want to go out and you want to try to find that guy who can give you more consistent pass rush, and you can probably replace the run stopping in the aggregate with lesser contract players. So I have nothing against Groot. I think he's an awesome football player. But when I'm talking about roster construction, I think we as fans need to start being more, what's the word I'm looking for? Tough on the contracts that are given out. Because I look at the contract that's given out to a guy like Dawson Knox. In retrospect, Dawson Knox is a good NFL tight end, solid NFL tight end. Should we have paid him the money we paid him? Probably not. Right? Like Poyer and Hyde at the end of their career, should we have paid them the way that we paid them? Probably not. Like,
well, you don't pay him that if you're not going to use him, right? I mean, it's like if you were using him and he was like kind of, if you were doing like an Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews combination, like if he was like kind of that second guy, like getting like, now maybe that's a bad example because Mark Andrews hasn't been good this year, but you kind of know what I'm getting at, right? If you had that usage of 2 tight ends like you do see for some of these teams, right? Then okay, but like you're not getting that. So
all right. So closing it out here, any final thoughts that you have on this Buffalo Bills game, and as we head into this next stretch of games, which is at Jets on Monday Night Football, versus the Titans at home, at the Seahawks versus the Dolphins, at the Colts. Like that's a stretch where I think we need 4 to 5 wins, and we need to come out of that stretch 8-2 or 7-3 at worst.
Yeah, that trip to Seattle is going to be tough. Like I know they lost to the Giants yesterday, but that team is dangerous. They can do some damage to the Bills. Will Tua be back by that Dolphins game? I'm not sure. They're on a bye next week, and I think at minimum he has to miss one more game at minimum, I believe, and maybe it's even 2. I'm not sure, but I think that puts them right on track to maybe be back if he does come back for that Bills game. And then the Titans look like an absolute dumpster fire. The only reason they even got a win is because they were playing more of a dumpster fire team in the Dolphins the other night in prime time. This Jets game is really big, right? I'll just say that. Like this offense needs to get back on track for this game, and also we need to figure out when we're doing our pregame too for this Jets game.
Yeah, that's a conversation that we'll have, and then we'll get back to you guys over the course of the week. Maybe we'll do another. Sunday Night Football in America is awful. Like I wouldn't want to have to listen to Jason Garrett and Chris Sims and Tony Dungy for an hour. So maybe we can do another Sunday night at 7 p.m. after those 4 o'clock games. That might be a solid window because, oh my goodness, that game last night went into a delay. Oh my, having to listen to those people for as long as I did, like they're genuinely awful. Like there's bad. Like they're Fox Sports 1 daytime bad. Like it is just bottom of the barrel. I cannot believe NBC is paying those people a salary. Like you have a human troll in Chris Sims. You just have an absolute like moron in Jason Garrett and Tony Dungy. I would throw Rodney Harrison in there too. Like you
Well,
have
McCourty was okay. I'll give
McCourty's
him.
good. McCourty's good. But then you got Collinsworth, kid, who's only there because he's Collinsworth, kid. Like
Yeah.
it's Maria Taylor and it's McCourty, and it's just a bunch of flaming hot garbage. Like just an absolutely awful array of talent on NBC. Like just brutally, brutally bad. Speaking of brutally bad, the Buffalo Bills, I think, might want to consider adding another wide receiver to this receiving core. Do you have any sort of thoughts on whether you'd like to see the Buffalo Bills address the receiving room? I know there was a conversation today on NFL Insiders, NFL Network, and two of the insiders were like, "Go chase Devontae Adams." And the Raiders aren't eating money. The Bills aren't getting Devontae Adams. That's not a reality. But Ian Rappaport chimed back and said, "No, figure it out. Like, just go figure it out. And you have the talent. Go figure it out." So, where do you lie? Should the Buffalo Bills be chasing a wide receiver right now, or should they just figure it out?
Well, I'll say this, shameless plug to Greg Tomset. He had a really good thread on possible wide receiver targets, and he kind of bucketed them into like probably guys that would not be realistic, guys where salaries have already and cash has already been paid out, guys where that hasn't been the case and they'd have to make things work. And one of the guys that I just keep coming back to who's on a just garbage team, the money's already been paid out. Not sure exactly what it would take. Probably less, should be less than Devontae Adams, but Amari Cooper is the guy that comes to mind for me. That Browns team is going nowhere fast. Amari Cooper can get separation. He's not the biggest burner, obviously. So he's not like a field stretcher per se, and he's not necessarily the big bodied guy like Devontae Adams is, but he is a veteran, and I think he could add to this room, and likely the Bills could financially make that work given that he's already essentially been paid out. Now the question would be is because of that, would the Browns want more for him? I don't know. I'd love to have Devontae Adams. I don't know financially how that would work. It doesn't seem likely, but Amari Cooper, I could get behind that. I do like Amari Cooper.
Yep. William Basner said, would Amari Cooper be for just 1 year? Probably. Most of these guys would probably be just for 1 year. If it's me, like I'm not willing to part with anything higher than a 4th round pick. Like I'm team. I want my 1st round pick. I want my 2 2s. I want my 3. Like I want those picks. So even though this year's draft class, people have said it's like a meat and potatoes draft, it's not as deep, et cetera, et cetera. Like I want those. I want those day 1 and day 2 picks. You know us, we're draft guys here. The highest I'd be willing to part with is like a 4th, maybe a 4th and 25 and a 4th and 26. Like if you want to start having that conversation, but Amari Cooper, I'm game for. Darius Slayton, if New York decides they want to start selling, I'm game for. Romeo Dubs, if Green Bay is willing to part ways because of what's going on there, and you feel comfortable trading for a guy who did what he did, Romeo Dubs, I think, would be a great addition. And Deontay Johnson in Carolina, Brandon Bean and Dan Morgan have that relationship with one another, and we've seen how those type of relationships can play a role in trades that are made. So just literally go out and if you can get a guy, and that allows you to move everyone else down, because Khalil Shakir would be better as a 2, Keon Coleman would be better as a 3, Curtis Samuel would be better as a 4 if he's used the right freaking way, Joe Brady. And then Mac Hollins will be right in his place where he's supposed to be as a 5. And then as long as you put the guys on the field when you're supposed to put them on there at the percentages you're supposed to put them on there, we should be fine. But someone makes a really interesting comment, Pops Mafia, trade the pick the Bills got for Diggs. If we trade the pick the Bills got for Diggs for a wide receiver, and he's not in the stratosphere of Stephon Diggs or a rental, that would be a little, that would tick me off a little bit. And that's why I'm saying, like, if we got to be touching those top 4 draft picks that we have, the 1st, the 2 seconds, or the 3rd, I will not be pleased.
Yeah, I don't think that would happen unless you did get a guy in the stratosphere of Diggs, right? Unless you got a guy like Adams, and then you managed to get him, with the team for the next 2, say, years, like beyond this year, and like he kind of like was here for the foreseeable future. But like, I just don't really see anyone else out there like that who's in a situation where they would. And John, no, I would not trade a second for Amari Cooper for just having him the rest of this season.
My best offer would be a 4th round pick next year in 2025 and a compensatory or a conditional pick in 2025 that can be like a 4th rounder if we win the Super Bowl, or like, and it turns into a 5th rounder, right? Like something obscene. Like, so 2 4ths or a 4th, like a 4th and a 5th years apart, separated, would be the highest I'd be willing to go for Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not giving up a day 1 or a day 2 pick for him.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, we're going to have a conversation about when we're going to be doing this Monday night pregame show, and then we'll obviously have to have a conversation about when we're going to do our postgame show, as the Buffalo Bills will be playing next week in our time slot here at the Air Raid Hour. So we will get that information out to you on social media. So make sure you are following us at the Bills Guys for that information, and just checking YouTube as we put our shows up usually about a day before we go live, with a little notification about when we will be going live. So be prepared for that. Don't forget, there's a bunch of great stuff coming out from Eric and Anth breaking down the film. It's in the video section here at Cover One. You got Joe DeRosa tomorrow night with the Under Review podcast. This guy's coverage podcast comes out tomorrow. Cover One Buffalo on Wednesday. So stay here at Cover One this week for all your Buffalo Bills news, information, and analysis. And Dave, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I'm ready to put this one behind us, and hopefully we're not saying that again next week, because that's going to feel really bad if that's the case.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. If you could, before you leave, smash that like button. Always helps us in the algorithm. And again, you guys make this show. Just some killer comments throughout the entire evening. Love interacting with you guys. Love the back and forth that we had at the top of the show over Sean McDermott's decision and all those various different things. You guys make this show what it is. If you think other people would appreciate listening to this show on demand or joining us here live in the conversation section, click that share button, copy the link, email it, text it to a friend. We always appreciate that word of mouth as well. Until next time, Dave, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comments section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!